Your API starts returning, remaining connection slots are reserved under a traffic spike. Every serverless function opened its own Postgres connection. Drizzle ORM v028 Plus changed the Drizzle import path for Node.js Postgres from DrizzleORM/Node Postgres to DrizzleORM/Node Postgres/pool. If you're using an older version, the article's import may fail. Always pin your Drizzle ORM version and check the migration guide when upgrading. The article covers API routes for mutations, but Next.js server actions are a modern alternative. Here's how to use Drizzle directly in a server action for inserting a post with revalidation. The article mentions using at neondatabase/serverless, but doesn't warn that each serverless function instance creates a new pool if not cached globally. Use a module-level singleton, e.g., global this db, to reuse the pool across invocations, preventing connection exhaustion. Let's break down Next.js with Drizzle ORM, database integration guide, how it works, and the exact mistake behind that failure. Drizzle ORM is a lightweight, type-safe SQL ORM with zero runtime dependencies. You define schemas in TypeScript and auto-generate SQL migrations. It integrates seamlessly with Next.js server components and API routes. Start by creating a Next.js project with TypeScript and installing Drizzle ORM along with a database driver. For PostgreSQL, use Drizzle ORM and PG. Initialize Drizzle with DrizzleKit for schema management. Run these commands to set up your Next.js project with Drizzle dependencies. Remember to store database credentials in environment variables and never commit them to version control. Define your database schema using Drizzle's schema definition syntax. Create a schema, TS file that exports tables with columns, types, and relations. This schema is the single source of truth for your database structure. Here we define two tables, users and posts. Serial creates an auto-incrementing integer column. Always add notNull constraints and defaults where appropriate to avoid null pointer issues. Use DrizzleKit to generate and run migrations. First, configure Drizzle, config, TS with your schema path and database connection. Then run npx DrizzleKit generate to create SQL migration files and npx DrizzleKit migrate to apply them. This configuration tells DrizzleKit where to find your schema and where to output migration files. Always review generated SQL before running migrations in production. Create a database client instance using Drizzle's Drizzle function. Pass the connection pool from your driver. In Next.js, it's best to create a singleton client to avoid multiple connections during hot reloads. Here we create a pool and pass it to Drizzle. The schema object provides type safety. In development, use a global variable to reuse the pool across hot reloads. Next.js server components can directly query the database using Drizzle's query builder. This eliminates the need for API routes for data fetching. Use db, select, to retrieve data and pass results as props to client components. This server component fetches all posts directly from the database. Database queries in server components are safe and efficient. Never query directly in client components. Drizzle's query builder supports complex queries with filters, joins, and aggregations. Use where for conditions, inner join for relations, and order by for sorting. The API is SQL-like but fully typed. This query joins posts with users to get the author name. Always limit queries when expecting a single row to avoid unnecessary data transfer. Add indexes on columns used in where and join clauses. For mutations, create Next.js API routes that use Drizzle's insert and update methods. Validate input with Zod or similar, then execute the query. Return appropriate HTTP status codes. This API route inserts a new post. Never trust user input. Use Zod to validate request bodies. Use returning to get the inserted row, avoiding a separate select query. Drizzle supports relational queries and transactions. Use db, query with find many, and with clauses to eagerly load relations. For atomic operations, wrap multiple queries in a transaction using db, transaction. This query fetches a user with all their posts in a single query using the with clause. Drizzle's relational API is intuitive, but can generate n+1 queries if not careful. Use with to batch load. Wrap database operations in try-catch blocks and return meaningful error responses. Log errors to a monitoring service, but avoid exposing internal details to the client. This pattern catches database errors and returns a generic 500 response. Never send raw database errors to the client. They may contain sensitive information. Write integration tests for your database layer using a test database or in-memory SQLite. Drizzle's driver-agnostic design allows swapping to better SQLite 3 for testing. This test uses an in-memory SQLite database to test insert and select operations. In-memory SQLite is fast and isolated, perfect for unit tests. When deploying, ensure your database connection string is set as an environment variable. Use connection pooling and set pool limits. For serverless environments, use a serverless-friendly driver like at Neon Database/Serverless. This code uses the Neon serverless driver, which handles connection pooling efficiently in serverless environments. Serverless functions have connection limits. Use a connection pooler like pgbouncer. This is the same issue we highlighted at the start. Here's exactly why that happened. Under a traffic spike, every serverless invocation opened its own Postgres connection. Traditional connection pools don't help across isolated invocations, so the database itself becomes the bottleneck, hitting max connections and returning 500s. Every serverless invocation opened its own Postgres connection, blowing past max connections. The fix uses a serverless-friendly driver that reuses a single client per module. The fix: put a connection pooler in front of Postgres and reuse a single client per module. By switching to a serverless-friendly driver like Drizzle ORM/Neon HTTP, thousands of functions multiplex onto a bounded pool, preventing exhaustion. Creating a new pool per request in serverless functions opens a new TCP connection each time. This quickly exhausts database connections, causing 500 errors. Always reuse a single client instance. Omitting notNull on required columns allows null values to be inserted, which can cause runtime errors in your application. Always add notNull constraints where appropriate. Lazy loading relations in a loop causes n+1 queries, which can overwhelm the database. Use drizzles with clause to eagerly load relations in a single query. To debug database issues, enable query logging by passing logger, true to Drizzle. Use DrizzleKit Studio to inspect your database visually. Monitor connection pool metrics to detect exhaustion. Let's run through some common interview questions. What is Drizzle ORM? A lightweight, type-safe SQL query builder for TypeScript. How does Drizzle differ from Prisma? Drizzle is a thin wrapper around SQL with zero runtime dependencies, smaller bundle size, and more direct SQL mapping. How to handle relations in Drizzle? Use the with clause in DB, query to eagerly load related data. And a few frequently asked questions. What is Drizzle ORM? A lightweight, type-safe SQL query builder for TypeScript. How to run migrations? Use DrizzleKit Generate and DrizzleKit Migrate. Is Drizzle production ready? Yes, used by many companies. Test your use cases. Let's recap the key takeaways. Compile-time SQL validation, near-native performance, direct use in server components, safe schema migrations. Ready to go deeper? Up next. Next.js with Shadkin/UI, component library quick start, then TurboPack optimization in Next.js 16, complete guide, then React server component security, protecting RSC in Next.js and Next.js view transitions, React 19.2 native animation guide. Find them all at TheCodeForge.io. Thanks for watching. The full article and code examples are covered in detail at TheCodeForge.io.